Good afternoon, all attendees and authorities and dear colleagues. Glad to be here with the 5th AfriSummit, okay, and with the opening of the Egyptian Museum. It's really interesting, okay, and consider this talk as an appetizer before the lunch coming, one more and then the lunch. So today we'll be speaking and featuring on insightful discussion led by Europe and MedTech experts on the evolving global regulatory landscape with emphasis on lessons learned from the implementation of MDR and IVDR. These insights are shared to support African regulators and industry stakeholders in strengthening the regulatory system and achieving more effective implementation strategies. First talk will be led by Ms. Claire Birmingham on the global standards local impact. Ms. Claire had flew from Brussels to join us and engage more with AfriSummit attendee. Ms. Claire is the Manager of International Affairs at MedTech Europe, the European Trade Association, representing the medical technology industry. She works on international regulatory and market access issues, coordinating engagements with partners and policymakers across Africa, the Middle East, India, UK, and Switzerland. A great asset, Ms. Claire. Prior to joining the MedTech Europe, Claire worked in the EU pharmaceutical sector in public policy and communication and at the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris. She holds a degree in European Studies and Global Affairs and in Political Sciences and Philosophy. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Claire to the stage. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So yes, my name is Claire Birmingham, and I'm pleased to join you on behalf of MedTech Europe in Brussels. Before I get started, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the conference organizers for allowing me to be here today, and a huge congratulations on the success of this event. And also a thank you to Dr. Lydia for helping me along the way in the guidance of facilitating this conversation. So yes, thank you, everyone. Yes, I have the clicker. Here we are. All right, so I'm very new to MedTech. I joined about six weeks ago from the pharma sector. I think most of you might be more familiar with MedTech than I am, but just in case you don't know MedTech Europe, we are the European Trade Association for the medical technology industry, including diagnostics, medical devices, and digital health. And our membership makes up over 170 multinational corporations and 50 medical technology associations. All right, so today we're gonna zoom in on aligning global frameworks to help support, influence, shape, guide regional settings, right? So the two main regulations at play today are the MDR and the IVDR, so the Medical Devices Regulation and the In Vitro Diagnostics Regulation. Focusing on the MDR, so this is applicable since May 2021, plus an extra transitional period for legacy devices that fell under the old directives. And then the IVDR came 1 year later in May 2022, with again an extra transitional period to allow for a smoother transition. So both of these regulations were adopted in 2017. And here we are 8 years later at the end of 2025 with the European Commission proposing a revision, which is going to come out next month in December 2025. They're going to look at the proposals that they have already and sort of revise a few of the fundamental changes, right? So there's no proposed text available yet, but what we can expect are some fundamental changes kind of around the Commission's guiding principles. So the simplifying and reduction of administrative burden, that was a huge challenge when this came out in 2017. Another guideline from the Commission is to support competitiveness and focus on device availability and patient safety. So here on the screen, you can see a couple of examples that we're anticipating that will come from the revision. One piece of good news is that innovation should get easier in Europe. So dedicated pathways for special devices types, improved procedures for running studies, earlier clarity on clinical expectations. And then on the more administrative, practical side, there will be less burden and more predictability, right? So that means reduced duplication in reporting, more digital tools, improved scientific coordination, and there will be the introduction of new mechanisms to rely on existing device approvals from outside the EU. So that's where the revision is today, which we can expect to come out by the end of the year, so hopefully in the next 30 days. Now, taking the EU MDR IVDR and applying this at international scale, so applying this to international registrations. So here on the screen, you can see what's changing and what's not changing. So let's start with what's changing. So updates to CE marking documentation and certificates of free sale. There'll be more regulatory information and evidence required under EU MDR IVDR. And it's important to note that the extent of change will now vary by product and risk class. Now let's look at what's not changing. So the devices themselves, which is a good news. The same design, the same use, the same performance, and also the same safety. So just because it's new regulation does not mean that devices on the market are any less safe, any less performative. It's the same device. What else? The CE marking continues to be accepted in many countries outside Europe, and CE marking remains a trusted basis for international registrations. So basically what we see here is that between what's changing, what's not, what we really need is a sort of pragmatic approach to manage these changes that are rising from the transition to the EU MDR IVDR in order to avoid disruptions of product supply and hinder patient access. Now, zooming in on the challenges that our members have identified in the MEA regions, this includes on 3 sort of pillars under timelines, documentations, and harmonizations. So a lot of the feedback that we got back from our MEA working group is that there was unclear guidance on change management, there was inconsistent documentation requirements, and limited harmonization between authorities. And all of this resulted in longer review times and risk of supply delays. So, however, there are a few countries where they've already started implementing examples of the MDR. So here are the examples. We have Egypt and Bahrain, which now require notified body letters confirming CE validity, which absolutely strengthen traceability in those countries. Tunisia and the UAE introduced grace periods for parallel selling, which prevented supply disruption. Kenya and Tanzania continued reliance on CE evidence with added local vigilance, which was a balanced approach fit to capacity. And South Africa transitioned from listing to risk-based classification, which is part of a stepwise capacity building program. So these are examples of where it really shows that there's no one single formula, right? We can't do, the implementation is gonna be different across different countries, and you can kind of give and take and build your own in a sort of way. So here are the country examples. And a few of the lessons and takeaways here for MEA is number 1, plan phase transitions and clear grace periods. 2 is to consider guidance on how to deal with administrative changes arising from the EU MDR IVDR. 3 is that there is sort of a need, blatant glaring need, we would say, for international harmonization and definitions for significant versus non-significant changes. A second 3, practice reliance on trusted approvals such as CE marking. And 4, build regulatory capacity step by step. And last but not least, strengthen regional cooperation. So we've tried to put together a sort of checklist for regulators on applying what we said before was we need a pragmatic approach, right? So we have our 6 A's, which are acknowledge, accept, avoid, advance, align, assess. Don't worry, you will not be tested on these. Under acknowledge, so this means that the devices themselves haven't changed, right? We need to acknowledge that only the EU documentation has changed on these devices. Accept the updated EU MDR certificates or formats without requiring full re-registration. Avoid duplicate testing or technical reviews when EU evidence already exists. Advance the continuity of supply while companies transition to the new documentation. Align national requirements with EU evidence standards to promote consistency. And finally, assess, which means monitor the developments in the EU framework and their implications for local systems to stay up to date and adapt when needed. So all of this together, you have a few of the resources from the Commission. I'm not sure if we'll be sharing the presentations afterwards. I think yes. But yeah, so you have a few links that the Commission prepared as sort of information for international partners. And then here on the screen, you have my email address. As I mentioned, I just started at MedTech Europe, and I'm the chair of the Middle East and Africa Working Group. So I would love to connect with you. I would love to kind of align on priorities, opportunities, challenges, where we can collaborate on maybe a webinar or something. But yes, I'm very, very happy to hear from you. So thank you for your attention today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Claire, for this enriched presentation and for the pragmatic approach of MDR and IVDR and the implementation. Any questions from the attendee? we'll change the way today. We'll have the question directly after the presentation. Okay, so make it more interactive and lively. We'll not sit here, okay? So any questions, we're happy to take it now. Nothing in mind, okay. Well, there is a lot coming. Let me ask. The MDR and IVDR were major milestones for European regulatory framework. We do understand we were being ready from the industry level for years for the MDR and IVDR. Now we are facing another change and another updates coming soon by the end of the year. Yes. What's the vision? It had been around 8 years now. So what should we expect from this change and this revision from the European Commission in this update coming in a few months?
Yes, thank you for the question. Is this, yes, okay. So one thing that I've kind of taken away already from the conversations that we've had the past couple of days is that implementation challenges seem to be universal. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they are. And from the Commission perspective, we aren't, so obviously MedTech Europe, we welcome the proposals, we welcome the MDR and the IVDR, and we do support the underlying philosophy. However, there's a lot of implementation challenges that we need to address. When the proposals were adopted in 2017, companies immediately reacted, right? So they had resources, they made new investments, staff trainings, documentations, and so they really invested all of their time and resource into complying with the new regulation. But 8 years later, we're now seeing that a lot of the implementation challenges, so not the objectives, but just the day-to-day, so the SME friendliness, the predictability, the stability that was promised in the regulation is missing. So we're hoping that with this revision, that there will be a sort of let's go back to the basics of what the objectives were. So there's predictability, stability. We want a modern, robust framework that doesn't delay patient access and that secures medical devices that are safe and efficient for all patients.
Predictability and stability.
Yes.
So no much work from our end. I just want to understand, okay?
Yes.
Fine. From this, from your perspective, what is the realistic timeline for this adoption?
So the timeline for the adoption. So ideally it would be tomorrow, but I think they're busy. No, I think the timeline will probably take about 1 to 1.5 years. So we'll probably see it by, I think, summer 2027, but that's just a MedTech Europe prediction. We want this to be a qualitative process. We don't want it to be speedy, but at the same time, we can't really have patients waiting another 10 years for the revision proposal. So hopefully they can come up with something that will be passed in the next year, year and a half, and yes.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you very much. Please thank all Claire
thank
for
you,
the
everyone.
Presentation. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. This ties well with the second session. It will be from Mr. Eric Volberg. Mr. Eric will be joining us online. For the presentation, we'll be adapting global framework insights from MDR, IVDR for African regulators and industry. MDR and IVDR, Reliance and lessons learned. Mr. Eric is an eminent speaker in all regulatory forums and had recently joined us in the Middle East RAPS meeting. Eric specializes in EU legal and regulatory frameworks for medical devices, digital health technologies, pharmaceutical and life sciences. With a distinctive experience in AI, software, in vitro diagnostics and personal data protection, Mr. Eric has an extensive experience at the European Commission and several leading international law firms. He provides strategic counsel on complex regulatory and legal matters across medicine products, medical devices, biotech, and IVDs. Eric actively contributes to EU and national law and policy development through specialized committees at both national and EU levels. He is strategic advisor on law and policy development in medical technology for several EU institutes, governments, and industry associations. He serves as an arbitrator in medical devices-related disputes and is regularly retained as an external expert in litigation, speaking several languages. He provides strategic, sophisticated cross-border regulatory and legal guidance for complex medical technology and life science challenges. Welcome, Eric, to our AfriSummit. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lydia. I also realized I should send in a shorter bio, and next time, apologies for that. Would you like me to start now?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm Eric. Apologies, I could not be here in person today. That doesn't mean that I find this subject not relevant. I think it is very, very relevant. Thanks also to Ms. Birmingham for the nice pitch up about the MDR and the IVDR. We have short time, so I'll be quick. I'll also try to avoid the overlaps with Ms. Birmingham's presentation as much as possible. So let's get right into it. So if you are going to rely on EU law as a country in Africa or the Middle East, what should your system look like? Because my experience, as Ms. Lydia said, I also have some experience at Medcom in the Middle East. Where should you start? So basically, the standard to start is the WTO Good Practices in the Regulation of Medical Products, which is a very, very nice overview of how to basically design your international reliance system. What you may also want to do is that there is currently IMDRF work going on a playbook for medical device regulatory reliance programs specifically. Very interesting. And then from a policy perspective, Ms. Birmingham just mentioned the 5 A's. From a policy perspective, as you are a sovereign country, of course, you would need to consider what kind of reliance am I actually going to think about. So am I going to aim for work sharing, for example, more active cooperation with the EU? And the persons reviewing things over there, am I going for a bridged review? So, for example, this is, I think, also what MedTech Europe would like to see with its 5 A's, right? Where you take an application dossier or elements of it basically as fixed. And then there is full recognition where you would basically say, oh, if you can prove that you have a CE mark in Europe, then basically we can rubber stamp this into our national market. You might be inspired by existing recognition going on in Europe. Actually, we have existing recognition practices going on in Europe for the UK, which used to be a European Union member state, but then exited, but still recognizes the EU CE mark for medical devices, actually on a full recognition basis. Same with Switzerland, which used to have a mutual recognition agreement with the EU until 2021. Then decided that they were going to go full recognition for some time, and they have now negotiated a treaty, a more comprehensive treaty for recognition of EU law, which includes potential medical devices recognition, which they are currently negotiating as well. One of the things that I think you should really be careful to understand, I think Ms. Birmingham's remarks on making sure that you keep track of the EU system and understand the EU system is the transitional periods that we still have going on in Europe. We have the strange situation now that we still have so-called legacy devices that are in transition to the new regulatory system, which in case of in vitro diagnostic devices, for example, could go on until 2030, which would be after the expectation that the new changes to the MDR and the IVDR have been adopted in Europe. So you can expect quite a lot of change and also effect on the transitional periods in Europe. I will skip this part about the European system. What I would like to say here is that if you are going to go with a regulatory reliance system, it is important to understand how the European system works. It's based on a kind of public-private cooperation, you could say, where notified bodies do the substantive work and then competent authorities do ex-post market surveillance. That also means that you will always be dealing with many parties, which might be confusing. So it's important to understand each party's role in the whole system. Also, it's important to understand that a CE mark for a medical device or an IVD in Europe has a large dimension behind it. The EU is very much about harmonization of existing national legislation. So a lot of legislation, you could say, is not new per se, but also serves a harmonization agenda between European countries, which might not necessarily coincide with your own agenda. Then you have to keep in mind that behind the CE mark, there is a whole ecosystem of ongoing things in terms of horizontal legislation. So as you can see on the left here are the MDR and the IVDR. But in order to have a compliant medical device, it may be that you need to comply with a lot of horizontal European legislation as well, like the AI Act for artificial intelligence, General Data Protection Regulation for data, batteries regulation. And as part of your regulatory reliance program, you would need to decide what parts of this European compliance you will also like to import in your jurisdiction. Like, for example, if a medical device has a battery that is CE marked under the European batteries regulation, will you then allow this battery onto your market, or will you implement additional elements of local extended producer responsibility, like, for example, what will you require of importing parties in terms of recycling of batteries? These are extra elements to think about. So good practices to transplant. This is a bit written towards not a full recognition system, but rather recognition with some additional assessments. So what you should keep in mind, regardless of the regulatory churn, the substance of the MDR and the IVDR is actually quite very good, I think. I've also had the honor to be external advisor to the European Commission on the changes that are currently being written into law and that we are going to see actually on 16 December, which, by the way, is my birthday. So when you see the new MDR and IVDR changes come out, then you might also secretly congratulate me with my birthday. But keep in mind that on the substance, it is all very good, except that in Europe, we still have issues in figuring out how to properly calibrate the system on formalities. Well, basically like everybody is doing all the time in the world. What would you want to avoid? This is certainly in the 5 A's that Ms. Birmingham just referred to. So what you would like to have is to apply as few different sets of rules to a single product. This is something we are not so good at in Europe, but we are going to be better at that with the new proposals. What you also would like to do is have very clear guidance on what you want the application dossier to look like. If you are going to review, make sure that you have predictable timelines for this. Resource your competent authorities sufficiently. This is a huge problem in Europe, I would say. Because of the public-private cooperation, we see that many member states under-resource their competent authorities, which doesn't help at all. And when they resource them, they often have the tendency to resource them with people with pharmacological training that do not understand medical devices always so well. So also there, I understand sometimes you need to make choices, but be cognizant of the fact that medical devices are really different from medicines in the sense that they are much more diverse. They contain software, they work on engineering principles, which are often things that are not so clear for pharmacologically schooled people. If you are going to rely on the EU system, well, you are in good company because many countries are doing that. The EU may be a bit slow every now and then, but on the other hand, it's a very reliable partner that observes international standards. And this is also very much of a mainstay in European policy. If you are going to implement a Reliance program, make sure that you evaluate your existing legal framework to identify limits to implementing a Reliance approach. And as I've started by referring to the IMDRF playbook, determine on what kind of Reliance will be appropriate for you. I really recommend reading the IMDRF playbook, if only because it is IMDRF, so it's a global template that will ensure that you will not be doing something that's very out of regular practice. EU system will change soon, as Ms. Birmingham has explained. But what will also change is that the EU intends to put more effort into international reliance, both through IMDRF and directly. So, yeah, I mean, if you are working on a Reliance program, contact the European Commission and they will be happy to also provide assistance there. Things that you would want to implement nationally. Some of the things I've already mentioned, like standard documentation, you want a registration or notification procedure that results in something tangible for the companies that want to enter your market, like a decision or a license or certificate. You want a well-resourced approval process, possibly with links to other authorities. Let's say, for example, you have combination devices that have animal tissues or cells in there that also need other authorities to weigh in, and you want this to be efficient. As I've mentioned in relation to batteries, think about what additional extended producer requirements you want, like collection of batteries or waste electronics. And then be very clear about what you want to review additionally that might not have been reviewed in Europe, like, for example, halal requirements or things like that. So that's it. This is me, and feel free to contact me. I would love to write a Reliance system for a country elsewhere in the world. As I've said, I've been working with European device regulation for a long, long time, and this is one of the things that's definitely still on my bucket list. Thank you very much. Ms. Lydia, are there any questions?
Thank you, Eric, for enriching our knowledge with the Reliance, and happy to take any questions. Yes, please.
Thanks, Eric, for that very informative presentation. My name is Simone. I'm from the Medical Device Manufacturers Association of South Africa. I'm a medical device manufacturer. My question is, the elephant that's not in the room is the retailer. We have many devices that are sold via a distributor that is licensed. And then it goes to the regulator, not a pharmacy that's licensed by pharmacy law, a general retailer. And now all of a sudden we've got no traceability, no storage requirements, no nothing. How is that being addressed in these regulations for devices that we're now seeing? Thank you.
This is a really nice question because, and it's a pertinent question because this is also something we are actually grappling with in Europe. And we have not found a super good solution for that yet. So what you see is that there are some member states that say there are certain types of medical devices that can only be sold in pharmacies, for example. But to answer your question directly, this is in Europe. This is something that has been left to member states to decide for themselves. Also, because member states have indicated that this is a political issue of healthcare policy for them, and they want to reserve this competence. But on the other hand, you will have seen that in my presentation, I've mentioned that in Europe, medical devices regulation is very much also a market harmonization tool. And what we have seen is that there is also case law and policy of the European Court of Justice that, for example, says that member states do have to make sure that legislation that they apply for this purpose is not discriminatory and also actually necessary. So, like, for example, there was a requirement in Hungary that said that you could not sell contact lenses online, but only through brick and mortar shops. And this was actually a requirement that the Hungarian state could not really justify in terms of risks. So basically, to determine what medical devices you would want to regulate at, let's say, reseller level for what purpose is, something that needs to be calibrated quite well. Like, for example, do users need training on these devices? And also storage requirements might be important. That again goes to how well has a manufacturer validated the shelf life and also storage requirements for the device. So in Europe, we do have supply chain controls for maintaining quality of the device through the supply chain, which also, that might be interesting for you to know, that resellers are regulated in Europe for supply chain controls. So pharmacies, for example, but also drugstores that sell devices to end users do have responsibilities with regards to compliance of the device and storage requirements.
Sorry, thanks, Eric. Can I just add something on quickly? Sure. When I often get asked that question, especially from our manufacturers, I remind them that we have a Consumer Protection Act at government level, which obligates manufacturers to cause no harm. And I think we've got a lawyer speaking later on. So although we've got the medical device regulatory requirements, we've also got other regulatory requirements that you've put out as well. So people mustn't forget that although we are different to medicines, we also have some other various obligations as manufacturers as well. Thank you.
Yeah, like product liability, for example, right, for defective products. And a product can be defective if, for example, it is not built for the storage situation in which the manufacturer says that it can be sold to end users. So it's a very good addition. Yeah. Same with marketing and advertising laws, right? The claims that you make about medical device and advertising, these will be typically subject to general marketing regulations governing misleading advertisement directed towards consumers, for example.
Okay. Thank you, Eric, for this. Any more questions to Eric? Fine. Okay. Now I have one small question, just lessons learned to avoid the lasagna effect of multiple sets of layers of regulation for the same product. Okay. From this point, I'll ask about what are the potential implications on the targeted revision of EU medical device and IVDs for the countries that do rely on the CE marking as part of the regulatory framework.
That's a really nice question, because what you will see is that in Europe we will try to aim for basically a system in which more of these horizontal regulations, the regulatory lasagna, will be assumed, accounted for in a medical device CE mark. So in Europe, we have the concept of declaration of conformity. So a device that has been certified by a notified body can be declared in conformity by the manufacturer. So that's the last, let's say, regulatory document. But these declaration of conformity for a single product can be given under multiple regulations. So let's say, for example, I have a medical device that is also contains an AI system, a battery, and let's take that. Then these are two other regulations that require a CE mark. Oh yeah, sorry. Let's say it also has electronics in it, so then a restriction of hazardous substances also applies. Then the declaration of conformity under the medical device regulation can declare conformity to 4 regulations simultaneously with the MDR taking precedence. Currently, that system is not, I would say, optimally fine-tuned, but this fine-tuning will be better under the targeted revision, meaning that as a third country, you can assume that a declaration of conformity covers most of the regulation that would be applicable in the background, like artificial intelligence, like batteries, like electronics, and so on.
Thank you, Eric. That's a really good insight to know that the multiple layers will be decreased with one document, the DOC. Thanks again, Eric. And now we'll transition to the coming session, preparing for the future. Embracing digitalization in the medical device industry. As we look ahead, digitalization is not just a trend, it is an inevitable transforming, shaping the future of regulatory and operational framework. To remain competitive and compliant, stakeholders must proactively prepare for this shift. We are pleased to welcome Mr. Munir Al-Azouzi. Munir is a medical device expert specialized in quality and regulatory affairs. After working for many years with healthcare companies, particularly Johnson & Johnson, he created easymedicaldevice.com to help people better understand the medical device regulation worldwide. He has now created the consulting firm Easy Medical Device, GmbH, and developed many years to deliver knowledge through videos, podcasts, online courses. Easy Medical Device also acts as an authorized representative for the EU, UK, and Switzerland, and became a one-stop shop for medical device manufacturers that need to support on quality and regulatory affairs. Please join me and welcome Mr. Munir to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for welcoming me, and thanks for AfriSummit also for authorizing me to come here to present you this topic that is really important, which is mainly the IFU shifts. We talked before about digitalization. So now let's have a concrete example, because we will really make you testing also the solution here. So first, I wanted to ask you, maybe by raising hand, who is reading IFUs when you are opening a product or buying something? Or maybe you are reading that just, oh, you are. So we have 1, 2, 3. Not all, but we have some people. So, okay, so paper has some time to live still. So mainly the idea here is also to tell that usually people are reading IFUs when there is really a problem, when they really want to find a solution, when they really want to understand how something is working. But sometimes it's difficult to find the document, mainly because you lose it. It's somewhere on a cabinet or anywhere. It's outdated also. It's an old version. You have also some, you have maybe seen those IFUs, big IFUs with small fonts, a lot of languages, and also the fact that for manufacturers, it can be also cost in terms of environmental cost, but also cost for creating, shipping, all the logistics that goes with it. So mainly what EU has done, they have created legislation. It's not a new legislation, it's an old legislation that was updated many times. We had, lastly, the version 2025 that was just out. The previous version, so authorized, the 2021 authorized that we had EIFU for specific products, like implantables with accessories, like software, or like devices that contain some screens that you can have the instruction for use directly on it. And with that, they also ask the companies to have some other requirements to follow. So you cannot just have an EIFU, you have also to have some requirements to follow, which are, for example, risk assessment. You have to define the risk of using your product, using your IFU for this product. You have also to put in place some solutions in case this person is not being able to look at that on a screen. So you have to have also the possibility to ship the IFU, which is not good, but yeah, you have to give this solution. You have also to provide with this instruction for use the control of the documentation. We have to know what is the version that you are providing electronically. We have also to provide the language access. Mainly you can have multiple languages in one document or multiple documents within one screen. So you can also have that. And lastly, you have to keep that EIFU on the system for 10 to 15 years, depends if it's an implantable or not implantable. So what the 2025 version included now, they said that, okay, there was 4 categories of products that were authorizing EIFU, so it was not a lot. So now what they said, okay, we will expand EIFU not only for those 4 categories, but also for products that are for professional use. So if your product is made for professionals, then EIFU can be used then for that, which opens a lot of perspective for hospitals, for clinics, for centers that are using multiple products. They don't need then to get all those products by package. They can just have electronic version and it's sufficient. So Europe has started, but it's not the only one that has started this journey. We have Australia, which has an active guidance about EIFU. We have Japan, which is also inserting that in the norm for also pharma. APAC, so Asia Pacific, with multiple market access and also e-labeling. We'll talk about e-labeling just a bit after. And also US FDA, which is also authorizing that. So this is mainly other regions. But if we now look at Africa, we have some initiatives from the MHRA, for example, AMRH, for example, where with the guidance talking about the requirements for labeling, and there are some initiatives, but we are talking about it. It's not like in the law. We have also EDA talking about e-labeling for medical leaflets. So it's also like a start. And we have MECOMED that is also issuing a position paper about EIFU and why EIFU should be used. So this is mainly some start to use or to initiate the ball rolling, and want to see many more about that. So why now, which is most important, why Africa should use EIFU? Mainly it's about accessibility. If you are in a big hospital or a small hospital, if you have no access to all the languages of the instruction for use on your documents, if you have maybe some issues to find the leaflet, as I say, in a cabinet, or it's lost or it's outdated, then here you have the possibility to just, with one click, one scan, to find the EIFU, which is immediate. You have also the infrastructure. We had in Africa also, and in many countries, we had sometimes the gap between in technology. So instead of waiting for countries to have landlines for phones, now people are going directly to mobile phones, which is maybe improved in terms of technology. Here it's the same. We have in Africa also some solutions that maybe even for countries or locations where there is not a lot of internet access, there are other solutions that are available for bringing the instruction for use. And this is something that can be really important because this is helping also areas that have less possibilities to then access also EIFUs without having a big, huge infrastructure. We have also the chance that other regulators have also put in place those laws about EIFU. So here, as we talked about Reliance, harmonization, this is also a chance that you just harmonize what mainly is already done by other countries, which makes it then easier for you to have the authorization to have your products in the market, because it's mainly following exactly the same rules as other countries. We have also the environmental, as we said before, and cost. Then it's helping also to reduce the cost. No need to purchase a lot of paper, to print a lot of IFUs, kill a lot of trees, and make also the logistic to bring all those documents to the people. Just as I said, with one scan, one click, you have the documents that is directly there. What is also important is that you can update the EIFU directly, automatically. So this will be also bring trust to patients, also traceability. Mainly, you can, if there is a change of the EIFU, you can directly look at it, look at the last version, and then click on it and look at the information that are inside. No need to wait for a new document to come or a new version to be arriving to your place. And the last one is also for manufacturers in Africa. With this solution, they can also, as we said, reduce also all their costs in terms of logistic, in terms of language translation and everything, and print more paper, print more documentation for it. So this is a chance also for Africa to then go to digitalization without too much burden, because everything is nearly in place. So mainly what is requested by the authorities is mainly that you are putting this system under a risk management process, where you are verifying that everything is in place and that there is no risk of issues when you are using this system. So for that, you have a lot of requests that are technological, like cybersecurity, like having a backup solution in place in case one of your servers is down. A lot of things have to be in place, which can be also a burden for companies that want to put in place those systems, but they are necessary to just keep everything going correctly. So should you invest on your own EIFU platform? As we said, it's great to be used, but then to be implemented, you have a lot of requirements. So what we have done, we have created a platform called easyifu.com, where you can mainly get an EIFU directly. So if you have a phone, you can just scan this QR code, and you'll find directly an EIFU on your screen. You can download it directly, you can have it on your phone, and then you can even go to places where there is no need for internet, so that you can use it directly. So the idea of here is that just with one scan, you can have an EIFU. Inside this EIFU, you have multiple versions. You have multiple versions in terms of version 1, version 2, but also languages, which can help you for that. So there you have this screen with languages, you have the versions that are happening there, and mainly you have the EIFU that is directly visible. As long as you have a PDF file, you can plus that inside and it's working. So EasyIFU, it's this QR code that we showed to you, but it's also directly a URL, a short URL that you can just put on your system to have the solution. And lastly, you have to put also, you can put also this QR code on your products or your label packaging, and then directly people can scan it and have all the information directly with one click. So mainly this with the information, you have the QR code, you have the URL, and then you can directly use that. So EasyIFU is also having a free test version, so you can test it and verify if this is convenient for you. Lastly, what we are trying to do with EIFU, we are going further with e-labeling, so we'll try also to work on that, so to reduce the size of the labels, but having just one scan to have all the information that are not critical. Use AI, instead of you searching for the information inside your EIFU, why don't you just ask, is this product made for children? Is this product good for this person that has this kind of disease? Why should you look for maybe a 30-page document just to find this information? You can use AI and you can have that also. Vocal IFU for people that cannot read very well or are blind. So maybe they can just have the IFU read to them instead of them trying to read it. Or video IFU for people that prefer to see a video on how to use a product, like me, instead of reading. So you can just tell me how to do that and I will just apply it. So these are the next thing that we are working on. And mainly, what I wanted to say at the end is Europe created the rules, so I hope Africa will use them just to be in advance also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Munir, for all this future coming. Okay, I have one hesitating questions with all about the internet connectivity in some countries. If there is any problem, how could this be bridged? You've mentioned one statement that it can have a solution also in your presentation.
Yeah, as I mentioned, so for example, yeah, there are some rules in terms of no accessibility to connections, which are paper version. So this is a problem where, for example, if you don't have access, you can still normally, by law, ask the manufacturer to provide you the IFU and then to have it. Or, as I talked before, you can use cache of your system to then download the document directly and use it at the place where you have to use it. But yeah, there are still some progress to do in terms of how to bring eIFU to places where really there is no connectivity at all. But yeah, there are solutions like that. But if you ask to a paper copy, maybe it can take a few days to arrive. So it's also a solution. I hope there will be no emergency. But if there is an emergency, mainly eIFU is the one that you can directly get without looking at everywhere to find it.
Thank you again, Mr. Munir. Okay.
There's a question.
There's a question here, please.
Hi, it's me again. Okay, do we agree that not every medical device will have an IFU?
Yes.
I mean, we've got, and I think it's something that we need to remember. We have got, in some countries, legislation where it says medical devices must have an IFU.
Yeah, correct.
So we've got, and just for people's interest, we've got things like procedure packs won't have an IFU because a procedure pack is definitely designed for a Caesar or whatever it's designed for. We also have other items like a walking stick, crepe bandages. First aid kits don't come with an IFU. So I think we need to be very cautious when we write our guidance documents that we look at the bigger picture with the diversity of the devices. Thank you.
Yeah, no, yes, you have some products like my glasses. It's a medical device, but there is no need of IFU because as there is an obvious use, I will not have to read an IFU to understand how to use that. But yeah, you have products where IFU is needed, and many these are also can be eligible for that. If it's a product that you buy in a pharmacy, for example, and it's for your usage, you are not a professional, there is maybe no eIFU on the products, you have to have it in paper. But as I said, if it's a professional use, this can be an advantage for hospitals. Instead of receiving 10 times or 20 times the same IFU on the boxes, they can just scan, and they have also less burden about that. So don't hesitate, use easyifu.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Munir. Thank you very much. Okay. From a manufacturer perspective, embracing digitalizations requires strategic investment and the reconfiguration of the existing infrastructure to support digital process and data integrity. Today, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Mark. He's Head of Sales Europe and Global Strategic Projects at Schlavander Hash. He will introduce innovative solutions designed to support and accelerate the digital transition. Mark has been working for the pharmaceutical and medical device industries for the last 13 years. He is specialized in regulatory labeling and specifically how process and technologies can reinforce or compromise a patient safety. Please join me and welcome Mr. Mark to the stage.
Thank you. All right, so I believe I'm standing just in front of your lunch. So I'll try to have a little bit of fun quickly. Who likes a game? You do like games? Not so much, a little bit? Okay, let's do a really quick, simple one. So I'm going to the next slide. I'm going to show you text, and there's a mistake there. And you have 5 seconds to find the mistakes. Clock starts now. Where is the spelling mistake? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Have you found the mistake? Raise your hands. Yes? So, someone? Yes? The space with the 7, that is correct. And the duplicate Z. This is just to show that manually reviewing content is deceptive. Our brains are kind of too smart for that, and it's easy to miss something. I misled you too. I told you, where is the mistake, right? And there were more than one. So this is also when you're looking for one thing specific, you may overlook that there may be errors elsewhere. Can probably read the title there too. although it's all scrambled, if you keep the first letter and the last letter of the word, most people are able to read this fairly quickly. Yes, there are medical device recalls because of labeling errors, and this, of course, can and should be avoided. What can go wrong in labeling? So it could be missing a regulatory update. IFUs and manuals also can be potentially very, very long, so it takes a lot of time to review them. Could be a translation error. Also, it could be an error from the graphic team, so the team who creates the PDF artwork, who will then potentially also be published as an EIFU. Maybe they make a mistake. They forget to copy-paste content, or they transform some content. There could also be some technical reasons when moving from a certain file format to another one, the text gets corrupted, and then you don't have what you expect on the document. So the fonts that is being used, font is Arial, Times, New Roman. These are our fonts. Depending on the language, this is also very important. For those of you who have content in Arabic, you probably know it's specifically difficult for computers to handle that. So this can also have an influence on the quality of the content that will be on the labeling. If you're looking at paper, you can also have issues when printing the labeling, where if it doesn't get printed properly, then it can be hard to read and so on. So these are also things that are part of the reality. We were talking about EIFUs, e-labeling. Of course, you can have a document that you print. You can have a PDF that you upload. You can also use XML data. That is an alternative. How do you work between Word files to PDF to XML? You are converting data, and you need to make sure that this, of course, there are no issues in the correct conversion process. You may have you need to approve the process of conversion to make sure it's consistently converting correctly the content from one file format to another one. There's also the option of having the wrong labeling within the box together with the device. This can happen at production as well. So a lot of things can go wrong. Looking specifically at PDF considerations, if you are publishing those PDFs online, so for EIFUs, you need to ensure that the text is selectable. If you want to use AI to then read the text, if you want to use software to read out loud the text, the content of the PDF needs to be selectable, otherwise it will just not work, or it will not work really well. The fonts that are being used on the PDF must also be using valid Unicode fonts for the language. This is a little bit technical. I recommend you take this with your artwork teams. It means that for the language, you need to use the right font. We recommend to have a look at the DAISY consortium. They provide some recommendations for visually impaired patients, and these are some interesting guidelines on how to make it more accessible. So for online labeling, we talked about PDF, we talked about Microsoft Word, we talked about, which could be docx. There are also multiple types of XML formats that can be used. So here's a list of some of the ones that are used across industries. You need to decide which format you want to use. And again, the two questions that you have always when looking at formats is, how do you make sure the content of your labeling remains accurate across file types, platforms, that it doesn't change? And how do you ensure that the conversion, if you're converting between Word to XML or to PDF, that everything remains, again, the same accurate content? Here's a quick, and that will be my last slide. It's the most complicated slide I have. It's a quick, simplified workflow for labeling accuracy. So when you're going through the process of labeling, you usually start creating content, your text, that will then be your labeling. And then you want to control to make sure this is the accurate text. So you will typically approve probably a Word file, and you are reading the content and making sure it is accurate. Usually this is done by regulatory teams. The regulators are also reviewing that, of course. Then a graphic team creates a PDF artwork, and here you are just verifying that the content remains the same despite the file formats being different. You can also create something as an XML instead of PDF. And here you may be reviewing letter by letter, word by word. You may review also things like QR codes, barcodes, data matrix, depending on what you have. You may be also reviewing graphics if you have some to make sure they are correct. This is also typically done by regulatory teams. If you're doing EIFUs, this is the end of the process. If you're going to print, then this gets sent to the printer, who creates a printer proof, which is the case currently for you. And then someone will review that this printer proof is still the same as the artwork that you have already approved, because this is the file they will send to the printing machine, and it's slightly different. So here, just verifying that the whole thing is the same. This is typically done by the artwork team or the quality assurance team. Sometimes it can be done by the regulators, the regulatory teams. And once this is done, this then gets printed. And typically someone will scan or take a picture to make sure everything got printed correctly. And this is usually done by the printer himself or someone within the quality assurance department. All of these steps require a type of quality control to maintain consistency of content and, of course, risk of errors, and you use different technologies. The first two steps, they typically use searchable text technologies and Unicode technology. The following steps use pixel to pixel because the text is no longer selectable, so you're basically comparing images of content. And for the last one, you also, in addition, using cameras or scanners. As a company, we focus exclusively on the first three steps. And as I said, for e-labeling, you will stop once the artwork is being created. This is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. Any questions? Yeah, great. Just ask the question we can hear.
Thanks, Mark, for the presentation. My question is around the UDIDI and barcoding. So does your software have any sort of verification application for that as well?
Yes, so one thing I didn't mention is of course, you need to verify the text, you need to verify the graphics. You also need to ensure that the codes, the barcodes, QR code, data matrix, any sort of code, is it the correct one? That's the first thing. Second thing is this technically correct? Meaning, if you print it, before you print, right, something can go wrong at printing stage, but before you print, is it still technically correct? You can check this after you print, but then if it's wrong, then you need to go all the way back at the beginning, and this is, of course, time-consuming and much more expensive. So yes, this can be done and strongly recommended.
So just to go on from that then, how would you use that software at a labeler stage as a production line?
So a production, you mean when you print? So this is something that we don't do as a company, but there are also companies who verify printed material to make sure it got printed correctly. And this is, of course, a recommendation. Only it's usually done by, usually either by the printer or someone from the quality assurance department. But yes, you have cameras, scanners, depending on the type of labeling we're talking about, the type of substrate, there are different techniques as well to do that.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, thanks, Mark, for this pragmatic approach of digitalization. Please join me with a big round of applause for our presenters. Thank you, Claire, Munir, and Mark, and Eric on the line.